It's already taken out about half of Iran's crude oil exports through November by our estimates, relative to the exports they were putting onto the world market in June. So that's a pretty big impact for a country that derives 80% of its tax revenue from oil exports. So fairly significant. Lower oil prices as well, taking away the value of every barrel of the remaining volumes sold. So an impact there too.
Well, you mentioned oil. It is a key concern and one that is a focus of some of these sanctions. Can we expect to see in the longer term an increase in global oil prices as a result of this?
Well, not going into the first quarter of 2019, at least not necessarily. One of the dynamics of the first quarter of every calendar year, generally fairly weak for demand, a lot of crude supply coming from Saudi Arabia, a lot of crude supply coming from the U.S. Second quarter, things get tighter, and that's when the U.S. administration wants to push more Iranian crude off the market. So price pressure to the upside, probably could see higher prices in the second half of next year if sanctions continue.
And the U.S. has said that it wants to reduce Iran's oil output to zero. How realistic is that threat?
Well, it's got a lot more to do with the willingness of buyers to defy sanctions. Iran's tanker fleet is sufficient in size to deliver the volume going out today. The question is, will the buyers be willing to defy the U.S. and risk sanctions? Enforcement from the U.S. could do a lot to change minds. Right now, we have a history last time around, India, Turkey, and China continuing to buy crude even with sanctions going. So it's a question really for whether or not the Chinese, the Indians, and the Turkish will continue this time.
Well, there are a number of European countries who are still a part of that Iran nuclear deal, aren't they? And they've said that they'll try to help Iran bypass these U.S. sanctions. How significant is that?
Well, the JCPOA is definitely predicated in Iran's terms on the economic benefit to Iran. So to the extent that keeping the deal alive means there has to be benefit for Iran, the idea of a European special purpose vehicle makes at least good optical sense. Practically speaking, though, European refiners who didn't want to expose themselves to all the risk of buying crude directly and overtly probably aren't going to want to take 100% of the risk for a small amount of oil. It may work for other goods. It's unlikely to work very well for oil, though.